Hey guys, welcome back. Can you hear me? Sorry for that delay.
Yes, sir.
Just let me adjust this slightly. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a little bright. All right, we're back. Sorry for the little delay. I have some things happening. All right, so we're gonna just jump into the rules of composition, and then we are gonna look on the assignment 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, all 6 of us in the class. All right. Anyway, we write our own destinies. Speaking of class and class attendance, remember earlier I spoke about some housekeeping that we're going to be doing. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Right, so we know about how the course is broken down. We have theory, that's 20%, 10% per assignment, and then we have class participation, that's 10%. And then we have the practical, that's what we're doing now. We're doing the first of 2 practical, and then the major project, which comes in at the end. When I was looking at my metrics, I was saying, interesting. So all of the activity grades are in. So of course this is for the entire class, right? So for activity 4, which is the Squid Games activity, which that's the really important activity, because that's where you get to select what you do for your assignment 2. So I had 28 participants. The lowest activity so far is for activity 5. I only had 10 participants, right? So remember how this goes, right? When you participate during the module, all of the scores are added together and you get graded out of the 10%. So if you participated in all activities, then you get the full 10%. All right. So if you want to know if you were part of the number here, if you notice there's this sign here that says view your grades. So there's a grade sheet update. So so this is the class participation so far, right? If you see a 1, that means you did participate. If you don't see your ID number, that means that you haven't registered for the class site. Remember guys, the class site where you go up top and choose register, you need to register that so that I can have your information on the grading report. All right, very important. Anyway, so for the grading sheet, all you need to do is to scroll across horizontally. So the grades are in for assignment 1. Remember that it is a percentage a day. All right, so you want to get in your assignment grade on time. I tried to put a little bit of descriptions so that you can kind of know what you did good and what you did bad. Obviously, I can't fit a full-on description in one line of text, so take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes I just kind of summarize, right? Also, I have marked, well, what I have already received for assignment 2. So right now, you can take a temperature check on what your grades look like for advanced computing 2 thus far, right? You just go here and you can check your grades. If you notice any anomalies, just please, the usual, let me know before before the semester ends, definitely. All right. If there is any errors that exist, okay? So that is a little bit of housekeeping for the module, right? All right. So today we unveil practical assignment 3, which is worth 15%, right? And we will do that after we have finished our slide presentation. Here we go. Oh, wait, not this one. This one. All right. So before we went on the break, we were talking about rules of composition, right? And we kind of spoke about the overlapping of things that you already learned from first year, things like elements of design, principles of design. On top of that, you now consider things like rules of composition. And those two things together gives you what? Who can answer that question? When you combine those things, what do you get? Starts with a C. What do you get?
Cinematography.
Exactly. You get cinematography, right? So let's get, I'm going to show you the principles of the rules of composition first, and then I'm going to show you the final version of that project that I showed you earlier, where I captured those different clips and put them together with sound and everything else. All right, so let's go. So we did rule of thirds, we did symmetry. Now we're going to look on some new ones that possibly you wouldn't have seen before, like leading lines.
Natural lines to lead your eye into the center of the picture or into your subject. Lines are a very powerful visual aid to help draw your eye into your subject, and they will also contribute to creating depth as well.
So when we talk about leading lines, and we're going to look on some more examples later, you can have leading lines in images as well. They're a bit more powerful in cinematography because the image is moving, right? So for example, I'm gonna just go back to my render folder here. Yeah, let's look at some of these renderings. So these are some renderings. A lot of these are a little bit old, but leading lines are things like, for example, if you look on this image here, right? You can see this road, and then this road kind of turns, it kind of disappears behind the wall, but then it continues and it goes up and it goes through this building, right? Can you guys see that road in this image here?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So that's like a leading line, because when you look on this image, it's like you can see that the pathway, right? Now, especially in architecture, leading lines is like a very important thing, because you have a lot of lines in architecture, whether it's straight or curved, or you understand. Leading lines for photography is a little bit more tricky. So for example, let me see here. I have some examples here. I started to show it earlier. Yeah, like for example, these, right? So in this case, we have some lines. You can, I don't know if you can see the names here. This is actually a place called Anakista, right? We visited there. It is in USA, in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, right? Like what you hear in the country western songs, right? And they have this I don't remember the name of the architect. I have a picture. I think I have a picture of the plaque. But anyway, they created this lookout tower that's here. And it was very interesting. But we're talking photography here. We're not going too deep in the architecture part of it. But this photo was taken where you can see these pointing to the elements. Can you guys see that?
Yes, sir.
So that is a part of what is cinematography. Like you set these things up deliberately. Now, as I was saying, that this is for images, so it is a little bit more, I don't want to say easier, but deliberate. It's easy to spot it. It's easier to execute. For example, here's another one here, another one of my favorites. So this is one that I took right under the looking tower. And quite obviously, you can see these leading lines just leading your eyes right up there. Like that is just, right? Very obvious. Now, when you're dealing with moving pictures, things get a little bit more tricky because the lines are moving, right? Your picture is actually moving. And I'm going to show you some more. Hold on here. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? You are here. Right. There you go. So for example, especially when it comes to interiors, right? So I'm sorry, I'm just skipping through. Okay, I'm going to show you another example. I don't have that example here. So basically what you're looking for in leading lines, it's just like images, but you're looking for an opportunity. Think about it looking like you're looking for a camera path, a path on which to run the camera, right? So when you're taking a shot, you want to, if you spot things like leading lines, like very powerful lines that intersect, try to use that as the driving motion for your camera movement, right? All right. I'm going to show you some more examples, but let's move on.
So compositions come down to guiding the eyes of the audience. Do we want them to look at one strong subject or let them wander around the picture? Leading lines is probably a technique that is the strongest in doing this. So what is a leading line? Essentially, it's a visual element that acts as a line, and when following that line, we end up with the subject. So we have leaded the eyes of the audience to the subject. Now, of course, that subject can be anything. It could be a person where we have a branch leading towards them, but it could also be a path leading towards this entrance of the park. Now, since leading lines are such a strong element to focus on the subject, it's therefore often used in establishing or long shots where it's not as easy to locate the subject. Alright, we get it. Imaginary lines that lead the eyes of the audience. But just like anything else in your shots, leading lines are also elements. They are either an object or something visually that grabs attention. And like we've seen before, we have two composition rules, the rule of thirds and the golden ratio. So what if we would place these leading lines onto one of these compositions? Then we get a very interesting shot. Take for instance the rule of thirds. We have a couple of leading lines here towards the subject. As we can see, these leading lines lay on the guides of the rule of thirds. It's a balanced framing. But where it really gets interesting is if we would use the golden ratio. This spiral that we're seeing right here is a leading line. So if we can find an object that somehow fits that spiral, we get a super interesting shot. In this example, we've got Lorenzo as the subject, and this path right here forms a leading line going into a spiral to him. And as we discover him in the shot, our eyes are being guided back to the beginning of that spiral with this branch right here that forms another leading line. We're going back to the start of the spiral, which guides us back to Lorenzo. And so the viewer has seen the entire shot. Through a very simple composition technique, we have made the shot so interesting that we look at every corner of the picture. This also means that we're able to have this shot longer in the edit without it getting boring. So look around in your environment. Can you see elements that form a line or a spiral? Great, now align that to the rule of thirds or the golden ratio, and you've got yourself a super interesting shot. Now, keep in mind that all of the other techniques that we've seen previously still apply. Work with depth of field, color, exposure, and the perspective of the camera. Now, until now, we've mostly been working with still images, so everything also applies to photography. In the next lessons, we're going to see how to bring motion into our shots, or how video editing works with different compositions. So perhaps take a break, go out and practice. So,
Right. So, do you guys have any questions? Do you kind of understand a little bit about leading lines? I mean, any questions so far? Hmm?
Clear as day, sir.
All right. And especially for architecture, it should be like clear as day. The trick is you have to now take that footage, and you're not taking an image. And this is why that's actually the challenge part to this assignment, because you're not taking pictures, but you're doing footage. But I guarantee you, if you can master this, your 3D animations are going to look 10 times better, right? It's a weird thing, but I mean, I have been doing renderings for a long time, presentations, animations, but somehow it is until I got a physical camera that certain, I would say, creative elements just kind of came together in my head. Because yes, I knew about leading lines. Yes, I knew about rule of thirds, just like how you guys know about it. No, I mean, yes, I know how to use twin motion or whatever, and you guys know how to do that too. But somehow, I don't know if you've ever looked on some presentations of architecture and you just look and you say, wow, that is a beautiful presentation, right? And it's in the back of your mind, you're like, this is so cinematic. It might not be talking about Avengers and explosions, but it feels very emotional and cinematic, even though you're looking on something to do with architecture. And a lot of these skills really develop when you do it in the real world, right? Which is why we have this assignment in two parts. We have it called physical camera and virtual camera. And this is why we start with the physical camera, because that is the secret right there. Somehow, when you go out in the field and you're able to deal with all of the unknowns, wind and hot sun and people and car horn distractions and sound and people talking, and you're able to capture a footage, then when you come to a controlled environment, like when you're in twin motion and you're trying to move the camera around, there are just certain things that you can now better do because you did it in reality, right? So this is why we're doing the physical camera first. All right, let's go to the other one. We're still on the topic of leading lines.
Create movement and take your eyes from one line to another, and once again they do a great job of creating more depth in your image.
Right. So even something like this, but notice in this example, all of these footage, they are actually moving. All right. It's almost like it's pulling you in because it's framed by this and framed by this. But again, notice the same thing that I said earlier. When you're trying to show something in a cinematic way, don't sometimes trying to get it all in one shot is very tricky. Sometimes you have to break down your shots into those 5 second, 2 seconds, 10 second shots so that you can focus on that shot and get it to be picture perfect. And then you switch to another shot rather than trying to carry one camera through the whole thing, right? All right. Of course, we're not going to go outside now, but we would have done that before, right? All right. So before we go to this one, hang on 1 second. Let me take this call. Hey, all right. Sorry about that. Right. All right. So patterns and repetition. Let's take a look on this one.
Are anesthetically pleasing to the eye. You will often find it in man-made buildings and structures. As a cinematographer, always be on the lookout for patterns and repetition to help make your image more interesting.
So remember earlier when we saw patterns, we saw it in photos, right? Now, if you want to capture a pattern and keep it in frame, and while you're keeping the pattern in frame, you're also in the back of your mind thinking about rule of thirds and contrast and alignment and these things, right? That is how you get something to be cinematic. So in this case, let me mute this. So in this case, the camera is moving down a path. In a way, it's a combination of, where's my mouse? It's a combination of leading lines, but also patterns, because these patterns repeat as well. But what else is happening? There's also symmetry, right? So that is happening here, right? Because this is like it's symmetrical. So it's like you have an overlap of all of these rules. You know, and the image is moving. But the clip is short enough for you to experience the shot without, and then if you want to experience something else, then you would change the shot to something else.
Lines that you see around you in buildings and in structures to help frame up your image. Here's a good and a bad example of me framing up this image correctly. You'll see that this pillar isn't lined up vertically and my horizon isn't lined up horizontally. And so I corrected it on my second take by lining up all those lines and framing my image better. You can also find natural framing around you in windows and doors and buildings and arches to help create new shapes and patterns in your framing.
So this is going to be the tricky one, because in all of this, once you're dealing with cameras that are moving, you're going to have to deal with the elephant in the room. Anybody can tell me what the elephant in the room is whenever you're taking shots? Videos. We don't have any vloggers here, and nobody that takes video footage. Anybody? What's the most tricky thing when you're taking video footage?
Sir, is it the rolling shutter?
No, not even so technical. Something very basic.
People walking in the way.
Nah, that's something to
Sir,
consider.
camera
But
shake.
camera shake. How steady can you hold the device? Because that is also one thing that in all of these examples here, you've noticed that they have very smooth
Are
cameras,
anesthetically pleasing to the eye.
right? So that is going to be the challenge. Now, it doesn't mean there, of course, there's all kind of technologies that you can use to smooth the camera. And sometimes I usually take them with me to class and we get to test them out, but we have to do it virtually here. But it doesn't necessarily matter, because nowadays a lot of good technology is built in. So those of you that have an iPhone, you'll have a good time, because I think that has some of the best stabilizations. Most modern phones have stabilizations, but some are better than others. But not to fear, those of you who don't have like a fancy phone, we're going to learn how we can stabilize footage in post. What do I mean in post? Like the video version of Photoshop. So when we go out and we capture the shot of this building, but your hands might be shaking a little, there are ways that you can smooth the shot from a software point of view. Just like if you take a shot and it wasn't good, you're going to Photoshop and you enhance it. Everybody does this already, right? You take a shot and it lean, you go in Photoshop and you can straighten it. Well, you can do the same for stabilization. So we're going to jump into one of those post-editing software. We're not going to do that today. We're going to do that when you actually capture the footage for the assignment, right? So the one that we're going to use is going to be DaVinci Resolve, which is free. You can download it and it's just as powerful, if not more powerful than Premiere Pro. If you want to use Premiere Pro, you can, but I'll be doing the class with DaVinci Resolve, right? All right, it's not necessarily teaching you about editing. It's more about certain techniques, so that when you capture your footage, you have a way you can stabilize it. All right. Now I won't be grading for. Well, let me put it this way: I will be grading for how steady you can hold the camera, but it's not based on if you have it's not based on if you have an iPhone or a device called a gimbal, which holds your phone steady for you. It's not based on that. It is going to be based, you can know, even if somebody is using an iPhone, you can know how steady or how well taken or how cinematic a shot is. All right. Having the device doesn't make you an expert, right? You still need to know how to manipulate the device, right?
With our camera, we can focus on a subject, making that person sharp and the background unsharp. We talk about having our subject in focus and the rest out of focus. The whole idea behind focus is that you can create more depth in your shots. After all, we're looking at a 2D flat video. It might not seem like we're shooting it ourselves, but the audience definitely perceives your video as two-dimensional. And that's why we as filmmakers have to create the illusion that our scene is three-dimensional. And focus is one of the ways to do that. Now, having your subject in focus and the background not separates the two layers. The audience will get a more three-dimensional sense as Lorenzo is loose from the backgrounds. Currently, we've got two layers, but we can also add a third one in there by also bringing in a foreground object. We now go from out of focus to focus and back to out of focus. Or we can even capture a gradient and have a middle part in focus. So before, with the rule of thirds and the golden ratio, we've only been working two-dimensional. With the depth of field, we can add an extra dimension to the composition. With the rule of thirds, we're defining where the audience should look at by placing the eyes on the horizontal line. With focus, we can make the subject sharp and thus the audience looks at that point. So combining these two techniques, we can place our focus point on the guidelines and really define where the audience should look at. But also, we're going to avoid having an out-of-focus foreground element to be placed on the thirds. In a shot like this, it feels like we want to draw too much attention to the foreground object, which is a rock. It's out of focus, so this shot feels irritating. That's why we're going to place it next to the vertical guideline and use the foreground to fill in the empty space, but not draw attention to it. Now, in some exceptions, the out-of-focus foreground object can actually be important, like in this example. We have Lorenzo looking to the landscape in the background. The background is in focus as that's my subject. I want to show the landscape to my audience. But at the same time, I also want to show that Lorenzo is looking at this landscape and enjoying this, so he becomes more than just a foreground element. So that is why we can place him more prominent in the shot on the guidelines on the rule of.
All right. Now, focus is something that we're not going to focus on too much. Haha, I said focus twice, right? And the reason for that is in our presentation here.
Exactly.
There we go. We kind of skipped over understanding lighting, right? We kind of jumped from the technical stuff into the artistic part of things. And of course, we did that because you guys are going to study tour tomorrow, and I wanted you guys to be ready to do the assignment, right? Understanding lighting is how you can manipulate focus, right? how do I guess you guys realize when you take that nice out of focus shot, and the last class we were talking about the bokeh effect, that's like the blurry effect, or if you ever see a picture at nighttime and the lights are all blurry, like if you understand how that is created, then you can use focus to your advantage. In most cases, the technology can do it for you. Most of you have a phone, and if you focus on something, it will blur the backgrounds. Some of it uses camera trick to make it look, kind of like an internal Photoshop. And others have the lens to do it properly. But as long as you know, I don't know if you've ever seen a picture with a blurry background and then you look at it and you say, boy, that look kind of fake. I mean, I don't know if anybody ever noticed that whenever the technology kind of cheats the focus, it looks a little weird. So if you understand how lighting works as it relates to taking pictures, then you can better understand how to create focus. But we're not going to focus on that today. We are going to just stick to rules of composition, right? And the last one is going to be movement.
The most remarkable director is probably Akira Kurosawa when it comes down to movements in his shots. There's a link to a YouTube video in the class notes down here that you should definitely see. It shows the work of Kurosawa and how he turns movement into a composition. It's really interesting. So there are two ways of creating movement. Either you move the camera and you basically change the perspective of the shot, or you keep the camera still and let your objects move. And this could be your talent walking, or the rain falling down, smoke coming out of a chimney, etc. Having movement in your shot changes the way that you composite. For instance, leading lines. In this example, we have Lucia looking to the left. Behind her on the right stands Lorenzo. Now, when we ask Lucia to look to the other way over her shoulder, her eyes function as leading lines that go into the direction of where Lorenzo stands. So during a shot, we're creating new leading lines. And the rain could also function as leading lines. It allows you to have a very prominent sky, but the focus still goes onto the subject, to the bottom of the frame. When adding movement into your shot, we're changing the point of interest, and we can use that to our advantage. Here we have our talent standing at a pond. We're looking at Lucia. But as she throws a rock into the water, we're automatically following that, and the point of interest goes to a different area. And this allows us to cut to a new shot, where the point of interest lays on the same side perhaps. Movement also draws attention. Say that we have two people in a shot. One of them suddenly starts to move. I bet that you saw that. Your point of interest was right here. So that is another great way to change the point of interest. Here we've got a shot of Lorenzo. He's the only one in the framing. But suddenly someone walks into the shot. A new movement, so instantly your point of interest changes to that point. Think of it as waving. If you like to have attention in the big crowds, you start to jump and wave your arm. You make movement. Alright, so we know that we can manipulate the point of interest through movement, but movement also allows for something else. The change of framing. Also one of Kurosawa's amazing techniques. We can have a talent in a long shot and ask them to run towards the camera, making a medium shot. There's a distinct beginning and ending to the shot. We could have cuts between the two framings, or we could have let the movement connect them together, creating a flow.
Right. So
most-
now that we're dealing with movement, if we look back on this example that we looked earlier, right? So the audio, right? So we have a combination of different shots here. We have this shot that is pushing inwards. Then we have a shot that is panning. Oh, come on. Come on. Okay. Right. So notice that the shot is broken down into these 5 or 6 second shots. Some of them, the camera is moving, and some of them is stationary, and the person in the camera is moving. So for example, for even this shot here, you can see where it has that foreground, that mid, and that background. And this person is looking on these two ladies here on the porch, and these two ladies are looking at him. So, your eyes get caught up in that whole conversation. That is like a part of what makes this cinematic as well. But also the building itself, the veranda itself becomes cinematic because we looked at things like the leading lines. So you see these very prominent lines here. Hold on. And most of these shots does have some very slow, well, I would say slow movements. The positions of the people in the shots is also what complements the architecture as well. So if you remember the first guy that we looked on, that for his architectural photos, he tries to get persons in the photos. Some people have different styles. Like the one we looked on the last class, that dressed the people up in these weird uniforms to let them stand out. Another person might dress up, the pose everybody.
7:01 p.m.
Like imagine you're taking shots at a wedding and you're putting everybody and positioning them perfect. So you can ask somebody to stand a particular way. If you want to take a picture of a building, you could ask your classmates to stand a particular way, maybe point to something, maybe look at something to create a leading line, so that when you look at that photo or that video, you're focusing on the element, which is the objective of the clip in the first place. So I want to show you this video that kind of combined these things together. And then I want to show you these camera movements. Now, this is going to be important because these are the camera movements that I want you to do when you go for your study tour. And when you're capturing your footage and your images, I want you to capture some images specifically with these cinematic camera movements. All right. So for example, we talked about the push.
When I'm out shooting nature style videos and I want to capture a landscape, and instead of just popping the camera on a tripod, I'll just give a nice slow push in that gives it a little bit more movement and makes things a little more interesting. It also helps when you can add people to the shot. Anything that can create some more movement to me just brings it to life. I also like using this shot to open up a location or a video. This is probably one of the most common shots we use, but it really does make things more cinematic when most people would just stick it on a tripod.
So push in. So all of these examples that we saw a while ago, the camera movement that's used here, it's pushing inward in the frame. But what you have to remember is, yes, it's pushing inward, but it is also considering other things like leading lines and rule of thirds and contrast and all of these things. So you kind of have to have all of these things floating around in your head, right? To let something look cinematic. So that is push out. Let's look on, that's push in, that's push in. Let's look and pull out.
Most commonly used to pull out is to reveal something, like this case in Dubai, I'm revealing these awesome pillars. Or in the snow coaster, as this guy comes sledding by, I'm revealing all the people that are there watching him. Or when I reveal this lady holding the ball for Lords of Gravity to throw down with. So though I don't use this move as much, it's definitely a good one to throw in to mix things up and give it a new look, and especially when you want to reveal something. Number 3 is probably my favorite.
So for example, in all of these examples here, right? The camera is going backwards, but notice that all you see is the subject, and as the camera goes backwards, it reveals additional things about the environment. So this is the secret behind a pullout. Now remember, this rule says that the camera must just be moving backwards. But remember the other things that come into play with cinematography. So yes, the camera is moving backwards, but then there is also leading lines that kind of form this opening, which makes the shot interesting as well. it's also kind of in the center of the shot, right? So because this whole movement is generally in the center, then you have symmetry that is playing a part as well, right? Am I leaving anybody behind? Do you guys understand what I'm saying here by this layering? Any question, guys? Are you awake? Are you here?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, let's talk about the most interesting one, the parallax. Parallax. I use this shot a lot in a lot of the work that I do.
Keeping them in the same spot in my frame, it gives it this look that they're not moving, but everything behind them is moving. And it's one of my favorite looks because it helps you focus in on your subject, but it gives you a ton of movement of things in the background.
All right, so this one is important, especially for architecture. Like, look on a shot like this. If your intention is to kind of, because first you have leading lines, they're heading towards this entrance here, but then you're able to show what the environment looks like. So you can see that the person is here, they are moving in a particular direction, but the camera is going around while keeping them in focus. Now, while it's keeping them in focus, what do you notice? Anybody? What do you notice? Da-da-da, da-da-da.
Are they in, do they stay in the bottom third or something like that?
Well, in this case, it's not about the lower or bottom third, but they stay on one of the thirds, right? So even though the camera is moving, they generally stay in this third. So it goes to show that what I'm saying here is that when you're capturing architecture, in order to make it cinematic, you have to layer all of these principles and elements of designs together all in one, wrap it up all in one, along with trying to move the camera. And that is how you get something to be cinematic, right? So this one is called the parallax. And the rules of the parallax is that you have to keep your subject in the frame. If they are in the frame, think about where you're positioning them. Are they in the center, like as a symmetry? Are they on a leading line? You know, you have all these things to consider. But then for the parallax, you are going around the subject. All right. So take note of this one because you're going to have to do this one. And a lot of people mess up on this one. All right. All right. So next one, we have the rise up. This is really...
At my brother's wedding, I wanted to replicate a jib going right over their heads, so I just pulled that glide cam straight up. It's a great shot that I like to use a lot of times for opening and closing scenes. At my brother's wedding.
So imagine if you're trying to reveal a building. I mean, this doesn't have to be people at a wedding. This could be trees. You know what I mean, guys? And then you're revealing this, I don't know, monument, building. You understand? So this is called a rise up shot, right? Anybody can tell me some of the principles of design that's also used layered on top of this? Who can tell me? I have to call names.
Principles of design that use what, sir?
That is also a part of this shot. So remember, principles of design, elements are design. There's like leading lines, rule of thirds, contrast, proximity. Geez, there's so much, but you know, hierarchy, all of these things. How are those things used in this shot?
So it's highly symmetrical.
Right, cool. What else? So symmetry is one. What else?
We also have a bit of hierarchy as well.
All right. There you go as well. Exactly. So that is what I want you to try to, whenever you're taking a shot, you must be able to see these rules coming through the shot that you're taking.
So it even has like a framing in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The two. Exactly. Then we have the reveal. This one is also super popular, right?
Again, and I'll usually only use this shot if there's something looking upwards to glide against, like in those buildings or these power lines, or in this case, the birds just kept coming, so I never even looked.
So for example, a reveal can be, and I'm going to show you some of these shots put together in a timeline. Now there are 3 more that's here, and I want you guys to research those on your own. All right. And when you put it all together, you get something like this. Hold on. No, not this one. Come on, open with, yeah, here we go. No. Question, are you guys getting the audio?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, there you go. So this was a combination of the different camera movements, right? So if I kind of play this back, here is a reveal, right? Then this is a parallax shot. You know. So it's just that you don't have anybody moving in that shot. This is a tilt down, but it's also a tilt down and push forward at the same time. This is another parallax. So notice that we're trying to keep this on the third while it's showing more of the land. This is another parallax again, right? And these are just some stock images that are thrown into the mix. This is a push in kind of a shot. And this is another parallax again. I shouldn't be telling you this. You guys should be telling me what these shots are, right? That's usually how we do it, right? Anyway. All right. So this is what was done. And I want to jump to the tips section of it. Like, okay, so we learned about the cinematic camera movements, and there are more, but these are like the most popular. And knowing this information, any kind of cinematic piece of architecture that you've ever seen, look back on it again and look on these camera movements, and I bet you that you can pick up, oh, that's a push in, that's a pull out, that's a parallax, You start to realize that, oh, so I can do this kind of thing. It's not like somebody else has this skill and that, there is some special equipment. It's mainly about the camera movements, right? There's a little bit of technicality, yes, like, how do you get the shots to be steady? And that is what I want to show you here with this demonstration. Using a cell phone, right? Most of us have cell phones. And I want to make sure I'm challenging you guys, all of you that go to the study tour and capture any kind of footage or video. Like, I expect some cinematic shots. Right? That's only fair, right? Rodrina? Only cinematic shots from you, right? All right, Regina. Is Regina awake? Miss Daly, are you there? No? Anybody? Okay. All right, let's take two. Right? Right, Miss Spence, only cinematic shots. Oh boy. Not there even? Right, Chantal? Only cinematic shots.
Yes, sir.
Is that you one there, Jeremy?
Yes, sir.
Oh, dear Lord. Okay.
So what
All
if I
right.
get tomorrow?
Yes, I know. That's why we're trying to keep this short. So this is the last thing that I want to show you. Probably the most important thing that you need to remember, right? Because I've shown you examples of how it's done. But now, how do you actually do it with the technology that you have, right? I know that we don't have drones and we don't have fancy gimbals to get nice movements. There are techniques that we can use with our phones, and then we can also use techniques in post-production using, just like how you use Photoshop to make a picture look nicer, we're going to use a video editing program to make your shots look smoother and more cinematic. But Photoshop can only go so much and no more, right? If you never take a good shot to begin with, then no amount of Photoshopping can fix it, right? So you have to have a good shot to begin with, and it's the same with cinematics as well. You have to have good footage to begin with. So here are some quick tips on how you can do that with simple technology.
Handheld camera moves for you using nothing but a smartphone. Camera moves that will instantly give your footage that high-end premium look and make any property stand out. But with that out of the way, let's jump straight into this tutorial with camera move number 1. The establisher. Okay, camera move number 1 is...
Now, you might realize that everybody has different names for it, establisher or whatever, but obviously that is a reveal, right? So what I gave you is kind of like the base name, and then everybody can put their own swing on it, right? So this is obviously a reveal shot.
The establishing shot. Really important, this one, as it instantly sets the scene. Find some foreground, frame your shot, and then reveal it. I went for a slider shot with this one, but an up movement or crane shot works just as well. Okay, next up.
Isn't that beautiful, guys, for a cell phone shot? What do you think?
Yes, sir.
Exactly. And you guys can do it too. I'm telling you, the secret is in the camera movement. That's how you get your shots that's the beginning of how you get your shots to look nice, right? You do have to know some other things. I'm trying to crash course it with you to tell you. But one of the most important thing is the actual shot itself, right? All right, let's keep going.
Movement or crane shot works just as well. Okay, next up is the room establisher. Super easy, this one. Frame your shot, walk forwards. Move at a nice consistent pace and then slow your footage down by 50%. This creates super smooth movements, perfect for any room. Okay.
All right, you see that? You hear that's one of the first little tidbit secret, right? Slow your footage down. So we're going to use some of those tricks to get your footage to look really good. But you need good footage. So when you go on your study tour, use those leading lines, those all of those tools so that you can get the good footage. Even if they're a little shaky, doesn't matter. You can make it smoother. No, what I was going to say something, but I don't remember.
Super smooth movements, perfect for any room. Okay, the tilt down, push forward. A little bit more advanced, this one. Start with your camera pointing up and tilt down while...
Okay, I remember what I was going to say. This walk, it's called a ninja walk. You can Google it. It's literally a thing, right? If you Google camera ninja walk, you will see it. It is literally something that, how do you say it? If somebody was taking a video of something and you see them doing the ninja walk, you best believe they know a thing or two about cinematography. Because whether you are a person with a cell phone or a person with a $2,000 camera, you're still doing the ninja walk. And it actually takes some amount of practice. You kind of do heel to toe, heel to toe. It's not something that, it's something that when you look at it, you say, oh, that's easy, I can do that. But when you actually try it, you realize, because to be thinking about ninja walk, rule of thirds, push, pull, rise up, it can be a little bit overwhelming, especially if you have other things in the environment happening, right? So that's why you just have to kind of practice, right? Anyway, but that is one of the ways that you can get your shots to be smooth. And for that ninja walk, the number one rule is that you have to bend your knees. You cannot stand up straight and take a video shot. The other thing is that, remember when we're doing cinematic shots, they are usually in short bursts. So if you want to, for example, you have this building that you're trying to look at, don't try to do the building starting from the left side to the front to the right side. It is going to be high, it's going to more than likely be very unstable. Try and get like the left side to the front, and that's one shot. The front to the side, and that's another shot. So when you break down your movements in these 5-second, 10-second shots, then your ninja walking makes that footage very smooth, because trying to walk for 20 seconds very smoothly is almost impossible. But walking for 5 seconds or 3 seconds very smoothly, you can do that. And that is how you start to get your shots to look smooth.
Walking forwards. Also remember, with all of these camera movements, try to adhere to the ninja walk technique. Heel toe, knees slightly bent. This will ensure nice, smooth movements. If any of these shots feel a little long, you can always add a speed ramp. This really grabs your audience's attention and increases the production value of your video.
Anybody know of the speed ramp? Some people call it matrix effect. Right? So no matter what software you're using, speed ramping is like a thing. It's very, just like how you're using Photoshop and you cut out background, you kind of know what that is. So any program you use, you know what it is to cut out background. In the world of cinematography, speed ramping is a thing as well, right? So hopefully we'll be able to touch a little bit of that when you guys have your footage, all right?
Videos. Okay, number 4, the door frame push through. This is an absolute classic and works in any property. Simply push your camera through a door frame and into a room. No need to walk with this shot, simply lean in using your upper body and extend your arms. This shot is perfect if you just want a quick shot of each room. Also, you can take this shot to the next level by tilting down whilst leaning forwards. This shot works great in tight spaces because it allows you to see more of the room. The room slider. Don't worry, you don't need a slider with this one, but we are going to replicate that slider look. Frame your shot, this works best at waist height in kitchen areas, and move your camera horizontally as smoothly as you can. This shot can really help give your footage that premium feel, as it's something usually associated with film and television. Use foreground with this shot to help accentuate your movement. Handheld camera moves for you using nothing.
Oh Lord, where was I? I
I
was
think
here.
usually associated.
Yes, go ahead.
What's that one called?
That, well, okay, their style, they call it the slider. These names are so weird. But this one, I didn't actually put this one on the listing for you, but people would call it not a dolly. What's the word? Is it dolly or pan? What's the proper word for it? People call it a pan. That's like when you're panning in give me a program, Photoshop, AutoCAD, right? So you're basically moving sideways. But the technique to do this is that you don't actually move, you don't actually walk. You kind of just lean your body to one side and then lean your body to the other side. But the thing about it is that when you put that in the footage, it turns out looking very smooth like that, right? It's so simple, but I'm telling you, like, it makes a huge difference, right? All right.
Vision. Use foreground with this shot to help accentuate your movement.
Notice it say about using foreground. So remember that rule about focus, where you can have a foreground, midground, and background. So you can see where you're now overlapping with the things that, as I keep saying, the things of elements of design, but you're layering that with a cinematic camera movement. All right. Also, there's also a little bit of leading lines because all of these countertops are all going horizontal and you are also going horizontal. So there is leading lines in it as well. And those leading lines are coming from the architecture, from the building. In this case, they're all horizontal, but if you have an archway, you can create an opening. If you have a symmetric line, you can be going forward. So the architecture actually speaks to the type of movement that would fit it. And if you learn that movement, automatically your shots become very cinematic.
Bonus tip, make it up. Take this shot here, for example. In order to do this room justice, I felt I needed to include the mezzanine level, the huge windows letting in all this natural light, and show off the sleeping area all in one shot. So I just made it up. I'm not really sure what this maneuver is. Push forward, pan, reveal, crane. The point is, you might just need to make it up. Experiment with tricky rooms and see what works best.
All right, so this shot is a parallax shot. Can you guys see that? It's a parallax. So you're keeping the post kind of in the middle of the frame, and you are like parallaxing around it. And that's the beauty of the parallax, because you get to show so much things in the environment while you're focused on something in the middle. So it's almost like in your mind, you are putting this room together in your mind's eye, because you are seeing something that is consistent, but something that is moving. So if for example, this post just went out of the shot, it's almost like your brain would be harder for your brain to visualize what the room it would feel like, because it's like your brain needs something that is consistent so that it can measure against what is not consistent, and then you put the room together in your mind. That sounds like I was very confusing, but do you understand what I'm saying, guys?
Sure, I get it.
Right, exactly.
yeah.
So that is the beauty of the parallax shot. You have to keep the element in your frame for that whole psychology to work. You have to keep an element in your frame while you introduce other elements, but don't lose that initial element for most of the shot.
Experiment with tricky rooms and see what works best. The pullback reveal. Okay,
course,
we're
this is
getting a
a
little
pull-out.
bit more creative now, but this is about as far as you want to push it when it comes to property tour videos. Frame your focal point tilt down whilst walking backwards, keeping nice and steady. Use this shot to help reveal different areas in the property and create a bit more intrigue in your shots. Again, you don't need to walk with this shot, try just using your arms to create the movement. The tilt down crane. A bit more advanced this one, but it's worth learning. We're tilting, we're leaning, we're sliding, we're combining multiple camera movements to create a shot that isn't seen often and can really add to the production value of your video.
By the way, guys, you notice that movement? Like whenever
Movements to create a
when your knees are bent, your elbows are bent, and look how the phone is held. Like, these are such simple things you might just pass off to be like, okay, I can just hold my. If you hold the device a particular way, some persons will never know that you even use a cell phone to get the shot. Right? Um, so I just want you also to look at this as well. Right? Like, none of you should be taking any shot ever again with your knees straight and your arms straight, and you just like you don't care. If you're thinking about cinematics, then especially when you're using these simple technologies like cell phones, that is the secret sauce right there. Right? You can always buy an expensive gimbal, or if you have a drone, then sure you can get those things, but this is how you do it with just the phone. All right?
sliding, we're combining multiple camera movements to create a shot that isn't seen often and can really add to the production value of your video. The worktop slider. Most properties will have a worktop, and if it's got an island, even better. Take advantage of this by using that worktop as a way of stabilizing your footage. Simply slide your camera along the surface and create super smooth shots that are a perfect way to show off any features in the kitchen. The hallway speed ramp. We deliberately want to shoot a long shot for this, and it's important to keep the camera as steady as possible throughout. We're going to push forward down the hallway and then turn into one of the rooms. Keep your movement smooth and consistent. Then in the edit, start in real time and speed ramp down the hallway and play at 50% speed as you enter the room. This is a great way to give your viewer a better feel for the property's layout, whilst also giving your footage that next level professional edge. Okay, I've saved the best for last, the pro finish. This is one of my all-time favorite ways to end a property tour video. Crouch down with your camera low to the ground, use foreground, slowly stand up and
that's
reach
a rise
as high
up
as you
shot,
can, holding your shot at the end for a minimum of 5 seconds. This shot creates a beautiful crane-like movement, rising up to reveal the heart of the property, whilst also leaving enough time at the end for you to add property information and contact details.
All right, guys. So that one is just a rise up shot. So those are some tips on how you can get those shots to do exactly what you want. Now, there's a whole segment where we talk about, the Photoshop part of it, meaning in this case, the video editing part of it. But as I said, we're going to leave that until after you have captured your footage, right? So, and there are some more as well that has to do with drones. Actually, right, but we're gonna look on this
11
for
has
the
the super wide
next.
lens and also has the normal.
We're gonna do this for the next class, I think, especially when we're talking about the virtual camera, which we'll do next. a little bit about, I want to show you this one as well.
iPhone 11 has the super wide lens and also has the normal lens. Both of these lenses are able to give you very good image stabilization. If you're on the iPhone 11 Pro, the telephoto lens might not be the best if you're trying to achieve smooth gimbal movement, just because there's a lot more shake that you introduce when you're at the long end of the lens. The other thing you want to do is turn the grid lines on your phone to help guide your composition. And I like to shoot at 4K to give me the highest resolution available on the phone. Another thing you want to do is also adjust and lock your exposure so you don't have different levels of exposure changing as you move your phone. So focus on your scene and pick one area in your frame that you want to expose for. In this case, I'll expose for the white. I'll hold on to lock it, and you can further adjust and compensate for the exposure. So the next thing you want to do is know how to walk. So not only you hold your phone properly, and you don't want to do this, because if you walk and film like this, you're going to introduce bounce into your footage. You want to bend your knees and walk like an ostrich or a chicken.
I like the ninja walk better than the ostrich or the chicken. What do you guys think? Right? We don't want to say the chicken walk. We want to say the ninja walk. That sounds cooler, right?
Yes, sir.
The next thing you want to keep in mind is to keep your speed constant. So you do not want to be walking fast and then slow down all of a sudden, but whatever movement you decide to do, make sure you have a constant speed. Next, I'll be going over a few gimbal moves that you can do handheld on your phone. So the first one is the dolly in, where you just
Right. So a lot of these are going to go over the same kind of camera shots. So push in, pull out, right? And we looked at some of these already. Tilt up, tilt down, parallax, right? And some persons have different names for them, but those are the basic shots, right? Now, all of this is available if you guys want to rewatch it again. But what is more
11 has
important is hold on, let me bring it up here. Ta-ta. Oops. Yeah. It's waiting on the internet here. All right. Who is going to, so what is more important is remembering the handout. Who is going to give me the drum roll for our assignment 3? Anybody? Okay, maybe Zoom kind of fade out the drum roll. I didn't hear much, but okay. I see that
Oh, sorry,
attempts were made.
Try.
All right, so here we go. Assignment 3, which is going to be, let me full screen this. It's going to be adapting film and photography techniques for visualizing architecture using a physical camera, right? So you guys have to use a physical camera. It can be a phone or a, I don't know, a SLR camera, mirrorless camera, a point and shoot camera. It just has to be real, right? So use a physical camera device to capture 5 to 10-second clips of any building, interior or exterior. Each clip must be captured using the cinematic camera movements listed below, right? So push in, push out, parallax, rise up, reveal, tilt up, tilt down. This is tilt up or tilt down, by the way, guys. Any one of them. You don't have to do and, right? And then this is tracking. Now remember, there are some that you guys need to investigate on your own, and I'm purposefully not explaining things like tracking, and I think tilt up, tilt down. I didn't, maybe I showed examples of it, but I didn't call it out because I want you guys to look it up. And the number one thing that people lose marks on is that they didn't look it up. So they just do what they think it means. And then, you know, I would say, oh, you didn't do tilt up or tracking. And they would say, but sir, I did it. And I said, nope, that's not tilt up and that's not tracking. All right. So you guys need to look up the ones that you don't know. All right. So your final production should be delivered as a single video containing all the listed cinematic shots stitched together from a single video, right? So that means that when you go on site in your study tour and you see this building or this monument or whatever you want to use, maybe you might take 3 different takes of it, right? You're not going to send me 7 videos. I want you to put your videos together in a single video. I know most of you know how to do this. I don't need background music. I don't need any. Well, the most that I need is maybe you can label them, but we are actually going to do video editing when you get back. So really what you need is you need those shots in order to do that class, which is going to be a class activity, right? So just get the shots. Now, if you don't have to get the shots at study tour. Suppose you want to do something here, right? It's up to you. I wanted to show you some examples. Let me see if I can bring that up for you. Ta-da-ta-da. All right, examples. I don't know if these are going to be good examples. I'm just going to kind of pull them by random. Come on, where are you? Assignment 3. There we go. Ah, there's so much. Okay. Let me pick this one. Okay, the internet is buffering. Oh, brother. I'm getting that error. I think it has something to do with Chrome. Firefox. Those other tabs seem to be getting errors today. All right. Okay. Okay, let me try and find a good example for you. I don't want to show you any bad examples, and then you follow that bad example, and you're like, "Oh, but sir, you showed this is what you showed me, right?" I want to at least see if I can find one good example to show you. Because trust me, what the disadvantage is that you guys are going right into the field to do it. Usually, you know, you would go outside and you would do it, and then we have like a little working session, and then I would say, no, you need to hold your camera different. And then you start to realize, oh crap, this is not exactly like just go outside and film something, anything, you know? So because you guys don't have that, I'm trying to see if I can show you some examples, and hopefully that will put you in a good spot. Okay, here we go. Alrighty then. No, this one was not exactly a good one. Because what happened, guys, is that okay, that's a push-pull. This is a parallax there. When you guys capture the footage, you're supposed to use the video editing to kind of smooth it up. That's a reveal. And oh crap, I don't want to show you that one. I want you to figure out that one on your own, right? So you didn't see that, right, guys?
Don't think what you're talking about, sir.
All right. So, these videos that you guys watched are, remember, always look in the folders below to see examples, all right? So I'm putting all of these in the folders below. So please, composition rules, cinematic camera rules, like all of these things, I've put videos to help remind you. Of course, they also have a recording of this class. Try and use it, try and get some good footage. Remember, if you get good footage, you can also use it for your study tour document as well. So, two birds, one stone. I hope it works out. All right. But
Yes.
this is your assignment 3. So, as they say in the courts, you have been served. Right? And just remember, so 5 to 10-second clips. Don't give me one clip where you move the phone up, then said move it down for tilt down, then push it in. No, there must be separate clips, right? You need to try it out first because it looks really simple. But when you do it and you look back on your clip on your computer, it's going to first look very shaky. Like you're going to be realizing, oh crap, how do I get this camera to be nice and smooth? And you just need to bend your knees, use some of the techniques that we spoke about, Google some ninja walking videos, right? And you can get it to be smooth. And remember, it's not going to be 100% smooth, especially if you're using your hands, but we're going to use the software to kind of give it an extra layer of smoothness, right? And but it needs to have something good to begin with. All right. So you can't give it something that does look horrible, like you're dancing, and then expect the software to work magic and make that footage smooth. You have to have something smooth to begin with. And we're going to learn how to do that when you get back from study tour. All right. Okay, guys. So that is it on physical cinematic camera movements. I hope you learned a thing or two over the last 2 classes. Go forth and complete this assignment. And then when you come back, we're going to look at some video editing and then we're going to move into the virtual camera. All right.
How long is this assignment, sir?
This is supposed to be, well, it's going to be 3 weeks. You have 2 weeks that you're going to go on study tour. And then when you come back, I mean, yeah, when you come back, we're going to have to do a class. And then basically, after that class, when you come back, it's going to be due right after. So you need to have your clips for that class. I'm expecting you to already have your clips. So there's not going to be any time between the class that we have when you come back and to hand it in. The time is going to be in front to no, the time is going to be to get the camera movements. All right. So make sure you get the camera movements. The time is going to be about 3 weeks, I believe. But pretty much the first class that we have when you come back from study tour is going to be due like a couple days after that. Okay.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. For those of you who have not handed in your assignment 2, remember that it's a percentage a day. How much days gone already? More than 10 days. So that's already 10. Right? So if you were going to get 100%, now you're going to get 90. So please finish those assignments. All right. All right. So that is me for today. I hope that you guys are awake still. Hope I didn't bore you to death. And I hope you learned something. So, I will see you guys next class. All right.
Bye, sir.
All right. Bye-bye.